Okay, welcome everyone to our last quarterly meeting of the Hudson River Valley Greenway before summer. We have a beautiful day here in Newburgh, my native city, and it's great to see all of you here, and we look forward to a good meeting. And here I am with my co-chair, Barney McHenry, and as we do with every meeting, we start with a Pledge of Allegiance, and I think our flag is right here.
That's right. Why don't you start
Okay,
off?
so...
It's your city.
Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very well.
Okay, thank you. Barney?
Okay.
Yeah.
And traditionally, we all go around and introduce ourselves. You know that was Kevin and I'm Barney. And we're so delighted today. Our featured speaker is
Andy Beers.
and he will talk about one of the most exciting things that's happening in the Hudson Valley since Hudson, I guess. Next.
Right.
Stefan Yarvik, Conservancy, and
Meg Downey, Duchess Representative on the Greenway.
Alfie Malarkey, Scenic Hudson.
Linda Vonderhead, a Rensselaer County Representative.
This is Betty Head, and I'm a member of the council, of the Communities Council, and I represent Albany.
Morning, Dan Eaker with the New York State Department of State.
Kristen Brown, New York State Conservancy.
Wayne Aldridge, Communities Council.
Jennifer Schwartzberg, Greenway, Secretary of Board, Boston County.
Morning, Sandra Jobson, New York State Department of Transportation.
Jeff Olson, Alta Planning and Design, on the Empire State Trail.
John Burrows, Congress Association.
Naomi Person, Rizzo.
And then the second, a little louder, please.
Priscilla Redler, Executive Director of Greater Hudson Heritage Network.
Alan Zevis, Supervisor of Town of Marlboro.
Roseburg Line Community Volunteer and Historic.
Madam Palmer, Board Resident.
Stuart Sachs, Newburgh resident and Commonwealth Conservation Alliance.
Jennifer Net, Director of Mount National Historic Association.
Don Olson. Joe Johnson, military historian and executive director, Hudson River Valley Institute of Parasite. John Evans, street manager. Hank Osborne, U.S.
Paul Raptor, Dutchess County. Tom Watt, New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation.
Bob Elliott, Council Board Member.
Fran Dunwell, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation.
Vincent Altieri, Rockland County.
Jane Daniels, Representative on the Conservancy.
Jane McLaughlin, Conservancy Treasurer.
Beth Campochiaro, Greenway staff.
Michelle Smith, Hudson Highlands Land Trust, and also Putnam County Communities Council representative.
Joanna Young, Orange County Surrey.
Scott Keller, Acting Executive Director.
Okay, thank you all very much
Give our guest
for
here.
coming. It's a beautiful room, a beautiful place. And in the very beginning of the Greenway, there was a linkage across the river, Beacon and Newburgh. And it was so successful that now the sign of Newburgh is co-chair. And so it's especially nice because we have a great surprise for you to hear about one of the probably the most exciting things happening on the Hudson River in a great many years. But before we do that, we would have to, is Mr. Whitson here yet? Oh, hi, Mr. Whitson, Christopher Whitson. Would you say a few words?
Absolutely.
You are the Community Outreach Coordinator from the office of Frank Scott, whom we know very well and who's been a great supporter of the Greenway, so you are too, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. I live here in this area. Actually, I live east side of city Poughkeepsie. So I have welcoming remarks from the Assemblyman, and since its founding in 1991, the Hudson River Valley Greenway has been a model of successful environmental preservation programs that are seamlessly linked to responsible economic development. Its mission to preserve, enhance, and develop the scenic beauty of the Hudson Valley has been greatly accomplished through the shared vision of 264 communities, 13 counties, and expert leadership over the years. Plus, like so many things, the strength of the Greenway comes from the heartfelt interest of everyday people and civic leaders who recognize that our valley is a unique treasure for recreational and economic development. I have a particular interest in the Hudson Valley Greenway in that I am probably the only New York State Assemblyman whose entire district of 3 cities, 3 town borders the Hudson River. And as such, I have been assigned the Assembly Committee on Parks and Tourism and Assembly Chair of the Legislative Commission on Rural Resources. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to say a few words of encouragement and to express my thanks for all that you have done to make our Hudson Valley an inviting and accessible place for all of our communities. Frank Skartatos.
Thank you very much. Please give him our very best regards.
We also have with us today, representing Orange County, is our Orange County historian, Joanna Ewan, who's also, like me, a Newburgh city native, and we're just delighted to be in our neighborhood. So, Joanna?
Good morning. I am here to welcome you to Orange County because unfortunately the county executive wasn't able to make it. He's down with Ed Day and Rob Astorino today. And I'm not sure what they're discussing, but it might be the onions because there's an onion blight that's going on. I don't know if anyone's heard about it yet, but they're very worried about it because Orange County with the black dirt produces a lot of the nation's onions. And I'd also like to welcome you on behalf of the city government because our city manager, Michael Chiaravino, was also unable to make it today. And more specifically, welcome to Newburgh. And like Kevin says, I'm from here, so I feel like I'm welcoming you to my living room. We're in the middle of the historic district, 445 acres of historic buildings around us. To our north is Crawford House, which is the Historical Society. To our south is Washington's headquarters. And everything that you see on the hill behind you is what's lost from urban renewal. So there was a third more historic buildings than we even have today. Even so, after having lost all those buildings, we still have the largest in New York State. And I would also like to give a little bit of history. I know Scott doesn't want me to go too long, but Newburgh's very unique as far as Hudson Valley history because it wasn't settled by the Dutch like many of the communities around here. It was unsettled until 1709 when a group, about 40 refugees from Germany, the Palatine refugees, came to settle on the land with permission from Queen Anne. So they spent most of 1708 traveling through the Rhine Valley to the Netherlands, begging passage to England, then in London begging passage to America, and arriving here on a very, very cold winter day, so cold that they were unable to even cut foundations to put huts in the ground. And then they ended up surviving and thriving here. And the reason that I mention that is because Newburgh has this long legacy of immigration and cultural history that goes back all the way to that point in 1709. And so there's 2 projects that I want to mention related to that. One is that I'm working with the Orange County poet named Robert Milby to create a poetry series where we're writing a first-person account of 20 people who came to Newburgh throughout history, from 1709, that first group of Palatine refugees, all the way to the present. And we're asking that if any of you know of poets that might be interested in channeling one of these individuals from Newburgh's past, please let me know about that. I think we've got 6 out of our 20 chosen at this point, so there's many more available. And the second thing is that there's a book that's on the back table called Newburgh Rising, and I have 2 of them here, one for Kevin and one for Barney. So I will hand you both. these. And this was produced by a National Geographic photographer named David Burnett, who also lives in Newburgh. And he gathered photographers from all over the world to come to Newburgh for one weekend and photograph everything that they could find. And then they had a week to curate an exhibit. So they went through their pictures very quickly and found their favorite images. And this is the book that is the result of that. There's some in the back that you can take if you'd like a copy, and I have even more in the car. So if we run out, let me know. I'll grab some more. And then I do want to mention a few other things. One is that I've got a cemetery workshop series happening, so if anyone would like to be trained in how to properly care for cemeteries, the county historian's office is sponsoring 16 people per session. We have 4 sessions for the summer. And also I'm doing a program on June 24th called Engaging Latinos in U.S. History. So we are bringing in a scholar to talk about how you can't just translate a tour, that's an American history tour, into Spanish and expect that it'll engage that population. You have to start from the very beginning, which is approaches to history. So people from Latin America have a very different approach to history than we do, and you have to start at that foundation to have a very good, productive Spanish tour. And I would also like to mention that we have Tashay in the audience, and she is the recipient of the 2015, I believe, Barney McHenry Open Space Award. So she put together a African-American walking tour of Newburgh called In Washington's Shadow. And I just want to acknowledge that and also acknowledge Barney for being the catalyst for that. And I don't see him. I was going to mention Matthew Kierstead. I don't know if I see him in the audience. But he and I collaborated last year on a program called the Historic Tavern Trail that many have heard about. It's spread to various counties around the Hudson Valley. And we found out 2 days ago that we received the 2017 Leadership in History Award from the Association of State and Local History. So we're going to Texas. Yes, we're going to Texas in September to get our award. So I was going to clap for Matthew, but I don't see him here. And the last thing I want to mention is this book, which is the newest Hudson River Valley review that's put together by Jim Johnson's team. And in 2015, we celebrated. He's going to speak in a moment, yeah. We put together a tour in 2015 in October for the 200th birthday of Andrew Jackson Downing, where we walked through Newburgh and we looked for the old foundations of his house and talked about some of the architecture that still exists from his era. And it was a wonderfully successful program that was coupled with a lecture series at Marist College. So Jim is going to come up and say a few words about that.
Joanna, okay, is special because her father, Harry, was the city manager twice, right?
Yes, 2 times.
And
longest running in Newburgh also.
And he's still above ground too, right?
Yes.
And he's done wonderful things for your fair city.
He and a guy named Joe Fogarty are the only ones that lasted 10 years.
But you've been county historian for 2 years now?
3 already.
3 years. And she's doing a terrific job. That's the kind of thing we need to do all along the Hudson. You're a perfect model.
Thank you.
Really are.
Thank you.
Would you mention the two societies to help you?
Sure. Yeah. And as Jim wants me to mention, the tour of the Downing's Newburgh that we did here was put together by the Newburgh Historical Society, which is also known as the Historical Society of the Hudson Highlands and Newburgh Bay, or the long name, but they're out of the Crawford House, and also the Calvert Vaux Preservation Alliance, of which Stuart's here in the back representing that organization, and that was the group that got together to do that walking tour.
Well, you do great stuff, you really do, but before Kevin introduces Colonel Johnson,
I'm here, I'm introduced.
He'll do. But it is to say that we did lose Bob Boyle last week. Now, many of you here knew Bob across the river, and then he moved up in the Cooperstown way. But Bob Boyle will be celebrating Bob's life this autumn, and Bob was the catalyst that got Storm King going. No question about that. He was a well-known writer for Sports Illustrated. But then he got fascinated, he got bitten by this nasty Hudson River bug, and you can't get rid of it. And he spent the rest of his days preserving the Hudson River. So I want to tell you about that, but then also, I got to say that at Boscobel, which is down the river, there's an exciting exhibition. It's just opened called Make Do's. And this wonderful lady named Jennifer Carlquist has found household objects that were broken and repaired mostly in the early 19th century. And if you have a chance, go down to Boscobel and see it. Okay, you can get the colonel on.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't need an introduction, but here's Colonel Johnson to speak more about Andrew Downing and his featuring in the current issue of the Hudson River Valley Review, which is dynamite. I received my copy in the mail last week and read it cover to cover. It's really a moment, a great instance of pride for us here in Newburgh. Downing really made his mark on the nation and the world, and we lay claim to him. So, Colonel Johnson?
Thanks, Kevin. You can see the kind of partnerships that we're interested in, because with this symposium on A.J. Downing that we did in October 2015, we were able to integrate these two historical societies here in Newburgh. And we also are your partners because at the Hudson River Valley Institute, we're your academic partner as well. So this is really an important issue, and Scott really was brilliant. He picked this site, Newburgh, for today's meeting, and because he knew this issue was coming out. All right, so maybe there's not cause and effect here, but it works out very well that we're highlighting Newburgh and A.J. Downing in this issue. You can walk to A.J. Downing Park. There are just many things that we owe to A.J. Downing in terms of landscape architecture. I guess every time we mow our yards, we're kind of bowing down to A.J. Downing and what one should do to make one's landscape around your house look good. So we had this conference, and we had brilliant people there. Went Aldrich, in fact, summed it up. He was our closer to that conference. It was a brilliant assessment of what everyone had said. He said it was difficult to do because there were so many important people who had brilliant ideas about Downing. We actually found everybody that had written most anything about Downing and had that person present. Frank Kowski, for example, a biographer of Downing. So it was a very important conference. One of the prices for admission was they had to agree to convert their talks into articles. And that's what this issue then became, sort of a proceedings of the symposium on Andrew Jackson Downing, which we called The Worlds of Andrew Jackson Downing, a bicentennial celebration. And we held it in October of 2015 to celebrate the bicentennial of his birth. So it was historically anchored in doing this. The thing that's interesting about this is he's really America's first landscape designer. And so when we think about this brilliant Hudson River Valley, all of the landscape ideas started with him, and then through Calvert Vaux and Andrew Jackson Davis, all kinds of other people, these ideas were spread to America. So I think here in the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area, we can take pride in having interpreted gardens and landscapes as one of the projects of the National Heritage Area. The other thing that's interesting about this issue is, has anyone heard of the painter whose work is shown here? Can someone who does, well, you all the people sitting around these tables, Kevin's read this. You were recipients of the subscription from Mr. McHenry, so you should have all been prepared for the test this morning. Does anyone know who's on the cover? John Kedor, who is a native, a Tepan-born native of New York, who most of you have never heard of, since I heard not a single response here. Saw a little-known painter of the mid-19th century, not a Hudson River School painter, but a painter. I know that this won't show up to everybody way in the back, but some of you may recognize his most famous painting, which is based upon Ichabod Crane trying to get away from the Headless Horseman. So what he did is he took a lot of our Hudson River tales, particularly Washington Irving's, and committed those to paintings. And so this is Rip Van Winkle. So his cover, our cover, his painting is about Rip Van Winkle. You may remember that the inspiration for Rip Van Winkle's Neighbors by my boss, Thomas Weymouth, was partly this guy, because his book, as I said, is called Rip Van Winkle's Neighbors. Ulster County, basically. So Rip Van Winkle's Neighbors is a social economic history of the Hudson River Valley centered on Ulster County, Kingston. So if you've never read his book, I recommend that for you. The other thing that was important about this is the professor who put this conference together and helped us with this issue, David Schuyler, was our very first Barnabas McHenry Scholar in Residence at Marist College. So Barney, we salute you for all of the support that you've given to the things that we treasure here in the Hudson River Valley and for your great support of the Hudson River Valley Institute at Marist College. Hip hip huzzah.
Thank you, Colonel Johnson. It's a really splendid issue. And the art, you'll all recognize if you ever have read Penguin edition of Rip Van Winkle or Ichabod, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, you'll know the art. It's iconic. Before we move through the agenda, I did ask our dear board member, Wynn Aldrich, to say a few words about Bob Boyle. Barney, you mentioned him, but I think that given the long shadow that he casts, he really merits a pause to reflect on his legacy here in the Valley. Wint?
Happy to do so. Mr. Chairman, the recent death of my friend, our friend, Robert H. Boyle, deprives both our public discourse and our beloved river of one of the Hudson's most outspoken and effective champions. For more than 50 years, Bob has been the preeminent investigative journalist, the author of what is still the best book on the river, the instigator of activist organizations, the recruiter of militants, the crusading enemy of environmental crime and folly, who along with others changed society's understanding of the estuary, its ecological significance, and the woeful injury that man continued to inflict upon it. The Hudson River Fishermen's Association, the Riverkeeper, the Hudson River Foundation, the invocation of the 19th century Federal Rivers and Harbors Act, the opening battle over PCB's contamination, all these bore the imprint of the man, and all preceded the formation of our Greenway organizations. Unlike Bob's modus operandi, ours is not the voice of controversy or acrid and often savagely humorous polemics. We do not seek redress in the courts or on the front pages. Yet it is very directly because of the dramatic success of Bob's noisy and unrelenting truth-seeking and evangelism that we today can be the consensus-building, broadly supported, and successful organizations that we are. Were it not for his achievements and those of a few others in days gone by, surely we would not be meeting here and advancing our agenda today. The living river thanks you, Bob Boyle. All honor to your memory.
Thank you so much, Wint. One other thing an item that Barney and I wanted to update the group on before we move to our presentation is the Tower of Victory in Newburgh. We've spoken about it a few times before, but one vantage point in Newburgh where one could have seen all of these developments happen over many centuries is that wonderful acreage just south of here, Washington's headquarters. And when the centennial of the Revolutionary War came around, not that long after the Civil War, there was an effort made to really go all out to celebrate that centennial. And in the 1880s, there was a major celebration. There were bands and fireworks. But the kind of lasting legacy was the Tower of Victory, which was commissioned by a leading architect of the day who had his hands in Grant's tomb and the Soldiers' Monument outside of Prospect Park in Brooklyn. Abraham Lincoln's son, Robert Lincoln, was in charge of the commission that kind of oversaw the work. It was really quite a major undertaking. And it's a beautiful tower of sandstone that you can walk by and see. It really is quite a commemoration to peace that was finished in 1887. It's just south of here. Maybe if you just cross Broadway on Grand Street, you'll eventually run right into it. And you can't miss it. You see it anywhere from the river, and it's really one of our pride and joys here in Newburgh. It had a belvedere. It had a great viewing station on top of it when it was built, where people could go up and literally stand in the shoes of Washington and get a sense of what the valley might have looked like when he was here. And it was there for many decades, but in the early 50s, a hurricane, believe it or not, damaged the roof, and the effort was really never gained momentum to fix it at that time. So since then, really for decades and decades, my entire life, the tower has just kind of been without that viewing station on the top. Well, thanks to the Palisades Park Commission and a number of other partners, great effort by Barney to kind of galvanize all of us, the money has been raised, and so the tower is being restored. It's a $1.6 million project. Work is underway, and we believe that the work will be completed sometime this fall or early next year, so that the public will be able to enjoy it in about a year from now. And you'll be able to go back to the Tower of Victory and literally walk to the top on one of those two stairwells and peer out across the valley, looking at Mount Beacon down to the Highland Gate. So it's going to be, I think, a really watershed for the valley and for Newburgh in particular. And we hope that the city works very hard to preserve that view. I know there's lots of efforts underway to develop the waterfront in Newburgh, but we really do hope that they don't obstruct the view shed from Washington's headquarters, because it's really one of the great views in the valley. So we're thrilled, and we hope you all enjoy it.
It's another piece of the legacy of Maurice Hinchy, too.
Indeed, yes. No, we thank Maurice Hinchy every day, anyone who lives in the valley. And so with that, we want to move now to our other really big, exciting endeavor, most exciting since Hudson, I think Barney said, which is the Empire State Trail. And for that, I'll turn it back to Barney to introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much. And isn't it great to have somebody who lives in Newburgh care about Newburgh? And we've talked about the past, and now we're going to move to the future. One of the most exciting things that's going on in state government, perhaps throughout the whole country, Winnie and I would both say that, but it is the Empire State Trail. The Empire State Trail would be going, where would it be here?
I'll go through that.
Okay. On the other side? Okay. And we've been talking about Hudson River Trails for a long time, and finally it's going to happen. And it's going to happen in large part because of Andy Beers and the Parks Department, New York State Parks Department, where he served for 10 years. You're really, I guess, still in theory staying with Parks, but no? All right. But you had 10 years. And in 10 years you did wonderful things. But that's just the first course. The main course is coming up. And this is this extraordinary trail, which when complete will be the largest, what, Andy?
The longest state shared trail in the nation.
Okay, so that's pretty important. I can't remember how to say that, but you can, and you'll do that. And Andy, why don't you just come up and tell us about the most exciting thing in the country?
That's quite an introduction, Barney. Thank you. Good morning. I am going to be speaking. When you came in, you should have received a handout, which is just a handful of blue PowerPoint slides that I'm going to be just using to guide through my remarks. I did serve as the last 10 years and worked with many of you in that capacity as the Executive Deputy Commissioner for New York State Parks in our Albany office. I'm the newly minted director of the Empire State Trail as of 3 weeks ago. I'm an employee of the Hudson Valley Greenway, working statewide obviously with Scott Keller, the entire team and the boards, but also with a number of agency partners across the state on the Empire State Trail. I will say I'll take Barney said it was credit to me. It's no credit to me. I mean, I will say, and this will come out in my remarks, the credit is to the governor. The governor proposed this in the State of the State in January. He proposed $200 million, which was enacted in the state budget through his efforts in April. So it's really, this is the governor's vision that is carrying us forward. So what is the Empire State Trail? The trail is intended to be a shared use path, which means it's not like a hiking trail like the Appalachian Trail. It is a trail that's designed for use by pedestrians and bicyclists of all abilities, whether that be runners, walkers, people pushing strollers, whether it be long-distance bicycle riders, whether it be kids with training wheels. It's meant to be a improved path that is typically 10 feet in width with gentle grades, either asphalt or stone dust, that will cross the state of New York and link our communities, a total of 750 miles. So I'm going to go right to the second page of my presentation, which is a map of
of the project. And the project really has three major components. And I'll save the Hudson Valley for last and go quickly on the other two. The first is completing the Erie Canalway Trail from Buffalo to Albany, roughly 400 miles. That trail follows the route of the historic and existing State Barge Canal and the historic canals through linking communities across upstate New York. It's been 25 years in the making. It's 80% done, but there are any number of gaps where the trail is not contiguous. And so in the next 3 years, we will be finishing projects to close those gaps and have a continuous trail. The gaps, as you can imagine, are there typically because there's some sort of a major challenge, the most prominent being how does the trail go through the city of Syracuse? The Erie Canal went right through downtown Syracuse. And today in East Syracuse is now Erie Boulevard, a 6-lane road where the canal was filled in and that road built on top of it, for example. So we have plans well along that predated, frankly, this announcement, but of how a contiguous trail will go through Camillus, Syracuse, and DeWitt, and we now have the funding to make that a reality. The section of the Empire State Trail from Whitehall, New York, at the beginning of Lake Champlain to the Canadian border at Rouse's Point, will be really an on-road bicycle route. There's not really an opportunity there for off-road rail trail or canalway trail sections. So we are developing plans for a bike trail that will be improved and signed and wherever possible on local roads to make that both as safe and enjoyable a riding experience. People can certainly walk it if they choose, but it will be on road. Let me focus now on the Hudson Valley and the Hudson Valley Greenway aspect of the Empire State Trail. If you look at the bottom of what's listed as page 2, there are some indistinct gray lines. Those are that's what exists today of the Empire State Trail. About 400 miles exists. You can see the Erie Canalway largely complete. In the Hudson Valley, we have some discrete trail segments, but they're not connected. And so what we will be doing, starting in Manhattan, is running north along existing rail trails, the Westchester, North and South County trails, the Putnam County trails. They largely exist, but there are these gaps where there's a major road crossing or a railroad crossing, and so we have plans and funding to connect those, to close those gaps and create trails through new bridges or other kinds of improvements. The trail currently ends at Brewster. We will be developing a rail trail connection from Brewster to Hopewell Junction, getting on the Dutchess County Rail Trail there, coming up through Poughkeepsie, crossing the walkway over the Hudson. There's another gap between, there's a little bit of rail trail on the east, on the west side of the walkway, but then there's a gap to New Paltz. We'll be completing that through trail work as well, connecting up to the Walco Valley Rail Trail to Kingston. So that means in 2020, when this section of work is done, you'll be able to either walk or get on your bicycle in the Battery in Manhattan and travel to Kingston, and you will be on road for less than 5 miles. An amazing accomplishment that's building on more than two decades of work to create these projects. Many of you have been involved in some of them and now cementing those together. From Kingston to the city of Hudson, we are going to be, that's the one major on-road section. There's really no opportunity, there's no rail trail opportunity there, so we will be running beginning in Ulster County, then back over to Dutchess and up through Dutchess and Columbia counties. We're working on route finding there that wherever possible will be on local roads. Virtually all of it will be on sort of small rural local roads where obviously traffic volumes and traffic speeds are much lower, so it's primarily intended to be a bicycle route, but for whether you're on bicycle or pedestrian traveling those local roads, that'll be a very pleasant experience. When you get to the city of Hudson, we have another project under design that will be a new rail trail that will run 35 miles from the city of Hudson to the city of Rensselaer in Columbia and Rensselaer counties. And then that will link up in Rensselaer. You cross the Dunn Memorial Bridge, you get to the you'll get to the Corning Preserve and the Corning Preserve Trail running north right along the Hudson River. That dead ends, it just dumps you right now in Watervliet, if you've ever done that section. We have plans and improvements then that will be on-road primarily, but for much better walking and pedestrian connections from Watervliet, both through Cohoes to the beginning of the Erie Canalway Trail in Colony and running north from Watervliet up to Waterford, People's Island State Park, where you will be jumping, and the beginning of the Erie Canal there as well, where you'll be getting onto the Champlain Canal section running north towards Whitehall. There are sections of the Champlain Canal that exist, short sections along typically the towpath of the historic canal. We have plans and funding to build additional sections there to expand the distances of the Champlain Canalway Trail. Where there is no opportunity, we'll be on road there as well. So that's a quick summary of the plan. An issue that has come up repeatedly is, what about all the connecting trails, right? There are so many great connecting trails to this route, and we have representatives from Orange and Rockland County. They have great, both the new Tappan Zee Bridge will have a trail, of course, and there are great trail projects in Rockland and Orange County. There's the Yonkers Greenway, and the Appalachian Trail crosses, and when you're in Kingston, where you have the O&W Rail Trail coming to Kingston, the future Catskill Rail Trail coming to Kingston. We have the Old Croton Aqueduct. We have the Fjord Trail. We have all these great connecting trail assets. Our current thinking is there is one Empire State Trail route, and we have funding and a plan to do that. But as part of this project, we will be celebrating and promoting, both on the ground with signage and in an online way, all those connecting trails that will build and expand the reach of this Empire State Trail as a network of trails throughout the state. Jumping through my slides again, and you can see that the work is meant to be sequenced over 3 years, with obviously the simpler, more straightforward projects, some of which we have our first groundbreaking at the end of June on a section of the Erie Canalway Trail out near Buffalo, where there's a gap in Amherst. But this year will be primarily planning, and then as we really, and design and bidding processes, when we get to 2018 through 2020, you'll just see a series of more than 40 construction projects that are slated across the state to complete the trail. Finishing up the executive budget through Governor Cuomo's leadership and the approval of the Senate and the Assembly, appropriates a full $200 million that is available to us to do these projects. They will be undertaken by a variety of entities. Here in the Hudson Valley, the MTA will be doing a major rail trail project. Department of Transportation will be doing many of the on-road improvements. The Greenway is going to be taking the lead on this new rail trail from Rensselaer, city of Rensselaer, to city of Hudson. We have Canalway Corporation undertaking projects in the Erie Canal, obviously, as well as DOT in that part of the state. We have state parks undertaking some projects as well, where they own sections of trail that are not developed today, but will be through this project. The primary trunk running from the Battery in Manhattan all the way to Buffalo, 550 miles thereabouts. About 85% of that route will be off-road, and the remaining sections that need to be on-road, because there's no other option, will be improved and marked and striped to make them both safe and enjoyable for bicyclists and pedestrians. The last piece of this, I'll say, is in addition to the physical construction on the ground, there's going to be a very robust marketing and campaign, online campaign. So there will be both a website, Empire State Trail website that will be stood up by 2018, and there'll be a mobile app. The website will be, the place to go if you want to plan and learn about the trail and zoom right in, interactive maps take you in very high resolution, where the parking areas to get on and off, where the access points, and so forth. The notion, the aspiration of the app, we have to turn that into reality, is as you're riding down the trail, you'll have both a wayfinding map of where you are, but you'll have access to information. Where's the nearest restroom? Where's the nearest bicycle fix-it shop? Oh, there's a farm stand coming up. There's an historic site a quarter of a mile down the road. So we'll be promoting all those activities for both local residents and people coming from across the state and across the country and the globe to enjoy and experience this trail. Finally, focus for the next 6 months. We are sprinting to try to get all this off the ground at once. All of you know, either you work in government or you work with the government, and you know that to complete 350 miles of trail and road improvements in 3 years means we're already behind schedule by definition, right? So we have a very aggressive schedule. We are finishing the route finding, and we are developing a plan that will be released in the coming weeks, about a 25-page plan, the draft plan for the Empire State Trail that will depict both, what are the goals of this project, but also much better maps than we currently have to show the routes, pictures, narrative explaining the project. We're finishing scopes with the various agencies of the projects, delivery timelines. We have a whole separate project underway with our consultants on this project, Alta, who are here. Jeff Olson's from Alta. Many of you know Alta, Alta Planning and Design. And with DOT, we're working on a whole guidebook that is more detailed about trail standards, whether you're a rail trail, canal trail, off-road, or whether you're on-road, road crossings. What is the state of the art of all those kinds of amenities for pedestrian and bicycle use, so that will guide the actual specific projects. We're going to be bidding the first projects, as I said, this summer, and starting construction on some, and then doing the more complicated outreach on some of the, and planning for more of the complex projects. Last two things, the notion of the trail is that we are co-branding in many places with existing trail segments. So we're going to be on the Dutchess County Rail Trail and the Putnam Trailway and the walkway over the Hudson and the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail and so forth. Obviously, those are local trail segments that will retain their identity as such, but our goal is to co-brand with those a look and a feel and wayfinding for the Empire State Trail that weaves all those segments together into one cohesive place. We're working on a logo. Always seems to be the hardest thing to do is decide what the logo should be. So that'll be happening this summer so that we can begin to get some of this signage and trail and wayfinding and out on the ground, interpretive signage. And we're finalizing partnerships with local governments. In many instances, we'll be on road on wherever possible on county, town, village, city roads, and that requires obviously engagement and participation with our local partners for completing that route and doing various improvements, whether they're delivered by DOT or whether they're delivered by county or local government. So it's a tremendous amount of work. I want to finish with probably where I should have started is why. Why are we doing this, right? Well, we have this tremendous opportunity that's building on 25 years of activity in the Hudson Valley and the Erie Canal. Hudson Valley Greenway, 50% done of one, the Greenway is more than one trail, but in terms of the continuous route, we're 50% there, we're 80% on the Erie Canal, and suddenly we have this incredible infusion of money and energy to finish in 3 years the additional work that needs to be done. We're going to be certainly, there's an economic development and tourism component of bringing people to our communities, but we also know that the vast majority of trail users will in fact be local residents, and we're providing a way to connect people to nature, to connect them to the history of this incredible, this incredible Hudson Valley, the story of the Erie Canal, the story of the Champlain Valley. We're looking for ways to create healthy outdoor recreation. And I guess probably finally what I would say, when you go to these rail trails and these canalway trails and you see what happens there, it's pretty amazing. They're actually pretty simple things. Yeah, you got to have a parking area, you got to have a bathroom, you got to have wayfinding. Then people go on the trail, and it's a place, you'll see individual people riding, walking their dog, running, but the vast majority of users are groups of people. They're often families, friends, multi-generational, and what do? They walk and they talk. Or they ride and they talk, right? And there are fewer and fewer places and opportunities and forums in our society today to just walk in nature and history, enjoy the people you're with, converse. They become a social commons that are this tremendous community asset to revitalize and link together our communities and connect the people of New York. So that's our project. You're going to be seeing more of me in the coming months and years at future board meetings, and you're going to be seeing everything from, we'll certainly be circulating the draft plans that are relevant here in the Valley to you all, and we're going to be inviting you to groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings, and there's also apparently going to be a board staff bicycle challenge. We're going to be racing from the Battery to Kingston, so tune up your bikes and get ready if you're on the board. So thank you, and I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'll be here for the rest of the day and happy to talk to you after. Yes?
Yes, we do. And the thing is,
Absolutely, and again, we're going to be celebrating and promoting all those connections. My going-away gift from State Parks was a 100-year-old copy of a compilation of John Barrow's writings that I've been working my way through, so I was very timely you should bring that up. And yes, I mean, there are so many great opportunities to, while the trail will be one route, to really, we're going to be promoting all the trail opportunities in the Hudson Valley, not just the route, yes.
Andy, if I might interject here, this is probably a good time to announce that the Greenway's Trail Grant application should be available in the next 2 weeks. And this year, we're going to place a priority on connecting trails to the Empire State Trail route. So, you're welcome.
You've got some money for that, Scott.
Yes, yes, we do.
I was very happy to see the very last sentence here about partnership with local trails and road management. And I'm thrilled that the Greenway is doing our part in helping to build those connections. But I'm wondering, some of these smaller entities, smaller land trusts, which hold easements, but don't actually own the rail trails, pretty common elsewhere, often have trouble keeping the infrastructure, like bridges, at the same time. So, is there money in that $200 million to help maintain some of the existing trails?
There will be spot funding for places where we need to do those kinds of improvements on existing sections. There's a modest amount of funding set aside for the Walcott Valley Rail Trail. I will say Walcott Valley Rail Trail is in some ways the exception, because that and one other project are the only places on this route where we're not on public right-of-way. But the short answer is, ongoing operations and maintenance is always, it's ongoing work, right? And our funding infusion is capital to build these out, and so part of the strategy of both the new sections and upgrading existing is working with, whether it be local governments, whether it be not-for-profits, whether it be trail adopter groups, to actually, enhance and build that long-term management capability. So, and I know for the Walcott Valley Rail Trail, the Open Space Institute, has been awarded a grant to do some improvements with the Walcott Valley Rail Trail Land Trust as well. So, short answer is there is some funding built in for immediate improvements on some of those existing sections, and it will be, one of our tasks is to continue to build and support a long-term sustainable framework for the maintenance of these trails, because the capital funding will be spent and then we'll need to maintain them. So yes, that is part of our vision.
And it's really important to remember that Jay Daniels and Fran Dunwell, who more than 20 years ago talked about this trail. And maybe the governor heard or read something about it at that point. But those two wonderful people never lost faith in the fact that these things can happen if you keep trying. And that's we're so glad. I mean, this is really extraordinary what you're talking about. And the amount of money in hand is
$200 million. For the whole state, not just for the Hudson Greenway, but the majority of which will be spent in the Hudson Valley.
How much in the Hudson Valley?
$123 million is appropriated for projects in the Hudson Valley and the Champlain section together.
That's adult money. It really is. But any other questions or comments about this? We're so glad you're here, and he's now part of the Greenway.
Correct, yes. All right, thank you. I'll certainly be around after if people want to.
Thank you again. We're now ready to move into the business portion of our meeting, and that always begins with a review of the agenda and with board member comments on the agenda. And I do think we have one change, which is about the budget, if we want to mention it now. Scott?
Sure. We were originally going to look to adopt a budget for the year. We normally do at our June meeting. Unfortunately, we didn't get final numbers from the National Park Service on the National Heritage Area appropriation until Thursday of last week. So we We got the budget together, and we got the same amount of money as last year, but you haven't had a chance to review it, so we're going to hold off until October.
Thank you. Are there any other board member comments on today's agenda before we proceed? Okay. So we first need to do, as item number 4, which is approve the minutes from our last board meeting, which was a combined meeting of the Greenway Communities Council, Conservancy, and Heritage Conservancy. So that's the first item. So all of you should have had a chance to see those minutes, and now we need to formalize those by adopting them. So can I call for a motion to approve the minutes? Stefan, and a second? Jennifer? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. And the same goes for our May 24th meeting of the Grants Committee, which met on May 24th again. So that was the smaller group. So this has to be a motion that's adopted by the actual Grants Committee. So those who are present and participated, can I ask for a motion on those Grants Committee minutes? Someone that was on that call. Some of you are here. Bob, okay. And a second from the Grants Committee? Meg, okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, so that moves through all approvals. And now we're going to go on to the Conservancy portion of the meeting, which is number 5 on your agenda. And I'm going to call the Conservancy meeting to order and look to approve the minutes of a special Conservancy board meeting we had on May 19th. That was actually a very important meeting. We acted quickly because it had to do with the Empire State Trail and really getting up and running so that Andy could hit the ground and get going. And so we moved through a number of items on that, and we do need to approve them again here.
Yes, we need to approve them.
Need to approve them.
Conservancy only.
Okay, and this, again, is for the Conservancy only. Those who participated, no. So first is from Jane, second from Jennifer. All in favor? Oh. Absolutely. Okay, and Jennifer, you too? Okay. Accepted, and all in favor, the Conservancy? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so those are adopted. All right, so now we move through, I think Andy just gave us a very thorough Empire State Trail update, but I don't know if you have anything you want to add. Okay.
Well, 2 additions. I wanted to welcome Andy to the Greenway, and I also wanted to announce that Paul Glesta, who is the project director for the Empire State Trail, began last Monday. He is not here today. He is working on the trail. So you will meet Paul at a future meeting, and that's it for the Empire State Trail update.
And the next item on the agenda is the budget update, which you just gave a brief overview. Anything more to add there, or we'll take it up the next meeting?
We're all done there.
Okay, and now we go forward with our Greenway Trail designations. We have 2.
Yes. We have a friend in the North Country named Jeannie Williams, and she has been working to get trail designations up there. But while she's been doing that, Beth has been working very hard to get trail designations down in the valley. And we actually have 2 today, one of which came out of a trail award that we gave last year. It's in the village of Altamont. It's for their Museum in the Streets project. It's 0.8 of a mile, and they got a 2016 planning grant to do the Museum in the Streets, to put interpretive signage up, and they now are looking to designate that whole route as a trail, as part of the Greenway Trail, and they hope eventually to connect it to the Albany Rail Trail, which is something that already will connect to the Empire State Trail, which ends in Voorheesville now, but is slated to extend beyond that. The second one is Martin Van Buren Nature Trails in the town of Kinderhook. They are part of the Martin Van Buren National Historic Site at Lindenwald. 2.1 miles of trails. Beth and I measured those. It's a beautiful, kid-friendly, fairly level, nice woodsy trail. There's a couple of Eagle Scout benches and rest areas that have been built in, the one that overlooks a stream and the other that overlooks kind of a wetland, open meadow area. We believe that this trail will draw traffic to Lindenwald, and which is right across the street. We don't believe it's going to connect to the Empire State Trail in the short term, but we do think this is something worth happening. The resolutions in your packet are for both the seeker and the designation, and we need a vote on that, and I think that's the only thing we need to vote on.
And we'll do one vote for both. Okay. And so this is, again, just for the Greenway Conservancy members, so we do need to pass one more. Do I have a first for that? Stefan? Second? Jane, okay? And all in favor from Conservancy? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so those are adopted. And I think it's great because a lot of people have Andrew Jackson on their mind of late in parallels in history or non-parallels, but Martin Van Buren must not be forgotten. I know, Wint, you and I try to keep that flame alive, right?
Yeah, nothing like a good old questionable politician from the past to keep
Indeed.
us going.
Indeed. Yes, Stefan?
Resolution say, okay.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So I think that's all in terms
That's
of
it for
Greenway and Conservancy. Now I've got to bring Barney back up and do the Communities Council portion of the meeting. Barney?
Damn lucky you're with us, you really are. It makes a pleasure to come to Newburgh. Not that it is a pleasure anyway. You do this wonderfully well. Okay, now, back on to the council. And you know, I mean, some of you may not know, this is bifurcated on purpose. Originally, the notion was to have just one group. And many years ago, we went to California to see how they ran the coastal group there. And they have two groups, a council and a conservancy. And that's how this notion happened. And our idea was to get twice as many people involved in it. Actually, we had some speed bumps along the way because there were some other people in the conservancy, Kevin, who had somewhat different ideas. But in any event, we all work together, and we've got this extraordinary, great new project to work with, Andy, and that's why you can count on us night and day to make this happen. Now we get on to the Community Council, and I've called the meeting to order, and now request for designation, Scott,
Yes.
Town of Kingsbury.
The town of Kingsbury
Tell them where it is.
in Washington County has requested designation, and this is a direct result of Jeannie Williams' work in Washington and Saratoga counties. Jeannie is the executive director of the Feeder Canal Alliance. A lot of what she has isn't even in the Greenway area, but she thinks our program is so great that she lobbies all of the communities. And a lot of the communities that we've had come in Upper Saratoga and Washington County are a direct result of her work. So I wanted to publicly thank her even though she's not here. Do you want me to move on to are there any questions on the designation request? Do you want me to move on to the grants?
Yeah, go to the grants.
Okay. We have 3 grant requests. The first is from the town of Esopus in Ulster County for the John Burroughs Black Creek Environmental Survey. They requested $7,500, and the Greenway Grants Committee is recommending $7,500. The town of Esopus and Scenic Hudson are going to collaborate on a detailed ecological survey of conserved lands along the Black Creek. The survey will help identify important natural resources and sensitive areas that new improvements should avoid. The results of the survey will inform the implementation of the John Burroughs Black Creek Trail Plan.
Scott, nobody around here has ever seen Black Creek. Describe it a little bit. It's a crescent.
Black Creek arises in southern Ulster County in the midst of the apple orchards, flows north into Chautauqua Lake, where it deposits about 57,000 metric tons of duckweed, and then becomes a whitewater stream flowing down across 9W by the old Wiltwick Boys School and flows into the Hudson directly across the Hudson from Norrie Point. And at the location where it crosses 9W, you have the rather unique thing in the Hudson Valley of having trout that are placed by DEC each year and spawning herring from the sea. I don't know of any other spot where that happens. Fran, maybe you know of something? It's a very cool thing, and I actually wrote a paper for my master's on it, so there is somebody who knows Black Creek. And somebody else who knows Black Creek is Diane McCord, who's the supervisor of Esopus. Would you care to say a few words, Supervisor?
Thank you. Well, the town of Esopus is so grateful and appreciates the $7,500 that Greenway Grant has given us. And the grant really represents one of the first steps in implementing the John Burroughs Black Creek Trail Plan. And it will help fund the ecological survey that will help to determine the best locations for the trail and access the improvements needed to complete the trail. I also want to mention that ESOPUS is in the midst of a new master plan after 21 years, and we have a new Economic Development Committee working hard, and John Bowles Sanctuary has always been a great part of our town, and I think that this will just help bring more people, make them aware of how important our first ecological citizen was, and we just are truly grateful for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. The town of Marlborough in Ulster County is proposing a Marlborough Mills Waterfalls Walkway. And they are looking to do a conceptual master plan. They've requested $5,100, and the Greenway, the Grants Committee is recommending $5,100. The town seeks to provide physical and visual access to the Hudson River via this trail, and it's proposed as a recreational and interpretive trail connecting the hamlet of Marlborough to the Hudson River. The project encompasses the planning phase for the first segment of the multi-segment trail, and Al Lanzetta, who's the supervisor, is here today. Al, would you care to fill in the blanks here?
Okay, thank you. The town of Marlborough would like to thank the Greenway for their continued support for projects that connect our community with the Hudson River. This particular grant is to fund a feasibility study for a trail that follows the Latin Town Creek from the hamlet of Marlborough to the river. The trail would highlight the agricultural history and its water-powered industry with its links to the Hudson River. We look forward to moving ahead with the Marlborough Mills Waterfall Walkway, and thank you for your support. I also like to thank some special people from the town of Marlborough: Rosemary Wine, Matthew Kirsten, Tony Falco, who is the owner of the Falcon, and Steve Osborne. Thank you very much for your support. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The final grant is for the town of Warsing in combination with the village of Ellenville. The town and the village have worked together to create a joint parks commission, and as such, they're applying for funding for $15,000 for the Bourne Road Park Revitalization Plan. The Grants Committee is recommending full funding on this one as well. Their proposal is to fund a site plan and itemized engineers' estimates needed for improvements to the park. Those improvements will form the basis for revitalizing the park as a gateway to the O&W Rail Trail, Ellenville, and Minnewaska State Park. And Andy, I know you can already see the vision just based on that. From that park, you would be able to travel up the O&W Railroad or Rail Trail to Kingston, pick up the Empire State Trail, head south on the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, and then cross what OSI is working on, creating a trail on 299, go up and over the ridge at Minnewaska and right back down into the park, which for a cyclist is a heck of a day. So we think this really ties in well. It jumps the gun on connecting to the Empire State Trail from our trails grants, but we think it's a really good project. And I think we're ready for the votes on
Okay.
Scott, I just wanted to say something. This is Jennifer Berkey. I just wanted to, I know I boost this idea every time, almost every meeting, but looking back to 2004, I think it was, when the Greenway developed the vision for the Hudson Valley Trail, and it was just a vision at that point. I began working at Ulster County Planning as the deputy director and began working on our open space plan, in which we bought very closely into that and envisioned a whole network of trails. And over the years, many of these seed grants have led to our developing a now nearing completion, or at least more than not, of trails all over Ulster County. And I think without this, we would probably not have become a detour on the Empire State Trail. So it all comes back to the Greenway. And I just wanted to thank the Greenway so much for its support of our vision in Ulster County.
Well, of course, you all noticed that all three grants are Ulster County, Jennifer, so that you're still doing good. And But this has been a continuum, a lot of good state grants going out. And Jennifer, you've been following this thing. This is an extraordinarily good group of, because you know all of these projects, right? Say yes.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've worked with every one of these.
Now, Scott, do we have anything to do with it? You've done the government.
We need a motion and a second and a vote on
Okay.
the request for the Greenway Community designation and the 3 grant awards.
Okay, Jennifer, you're making the motion. Second, Winnie?
Yes, second.
Okay, all
Actually,
right.
Jennifer can't because she's on the conservative.
Okay, you can't do that.
Rick can make the motion.
Winnie, you can.
I
Okay.
move.
All right, you move.
Second.
All right,
Fran
and-
seconded.
Okay, Fran. All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much. Now, we need, what else do we need?
National Heritage Area Business.
Okay, National Heritage Area. Now, you know, this is another one of those, they're all strung together in a kind of odd cobweb. And many, but not all of you know that this National Heritage Area is a federal program. And it's always just about to be discontinued. And maybe it will be this time, but we sure hope not. And because you get, Scott, how much is the Heritage Area grants overall?
$491,000 is what we're appropriated.
Yeah, and how many states are involved in this thing? Actually, in the Heritage Area.
There's 49 separate states. There's 19 million in appropriations in it. I am not clear on how many states have a heritage area, although New York has 4.
And so there are more in New York, and that's what I was trying to get him to say, than there are in any other state. And we were early in, and that was really, I guess, Maurice.
Yes, very much
really
Maurice.
did that because New York was the 4th or the 5th one in, right? I think about that.
We were one of the nearly originals, and we were the Hudson Valley was the first one in New York State. We also have Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor, Niagara Falls, and Lake Champlain, which is by state.
And what's this $500 thing? Where's that come from?
I'll explain that if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Debbie Duke from Teaching the Hudson Valley has been active in applying for grants. She got one grant, Parks for Every Classroom, which is awarded through the National Park Service's Parks for Every Classroom program, and it's to prepare an integrated education program within the Roosevelt Vanderbilt historic site. All interpretive staff leaders and some key interpreters will be involved in the development of this, and what they're looking to do is make sure that they're all pushing forth the same message in the same way with similar materials. There's another one that's not on here, because I didn't know if you knew, and I wanted to embarrass you. Debbie also has a intern this year named Molly Scott, who's coming in, and she was awarded a Barnabas McHenry Scholarship for Historic Preservation from the Open Space Institute. So we actually need approval for both of those from the boards.
I guess I shouldn't move that. Go ahead, you.
I can't move it either, I'm not on the board.
Winthrop?
But the last thing, do you want to do the resolution of appreciation for the SS Columbia first?
Well, yeah, let's do, we can get one big one for that one. Let's get Columbia on there too.
Okay.
Is it, because maybe we can have a word or two about the Columbia. Where is he?
He's right over there.
Okay. SS Columbia.
Close. She remains in Buffalo. She's being programmed with some arts community, with the arts community in Buffalo, and also some folks in Brooklyn for this summer. We're hopeful to raise the additional funds to get it to the Hudson River either this year or next year, 2018. And we appreciate chairs and Scott and originally Wynn's idea for proposing this resolution. Let Joe consult some discussion.
This was brought up at our last board meeting following the presentation by the SS Columbia that some sort of resolution of support or appreciation would be appropriate. Bob Elliott asked that we do it in such a manner that it wouldn't, in any possible way, prejudice them from being excluded from receiving grants. So rather than a resolution of support, we went with a resolution of appreciation. And now we're ready for a vote on.
Yes. Whatever that
resolution?
means, if somebody will move it. Good. Thank you, John. And it, Stefan Yarbeck, and who will second it? Seconded, thank you, Nick. All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? And that was, what just flew past?
That was a turkey vulture.
Is it turkey vulture? Oh,
Yes.
That's not a very appropriate thing. No, okay, we won't.
I was hoping you wouldn't bring it up.
All right.
Scott, just a reminder, that I recuse myself too from the Columbia vote. I'm on the advisory board.
Okay.
That's okay. Winnie's on everything anyway, so it doesn't make my difference. Path through history, come on. Tell us
All
about
right. Path Through History weekends are coming up June 17th and 18th. That's not this weekend, but next weekend. There will also be a Path Through History weekend for the first time in the fall, October 7th and 9th. That will be just before our next board meeting, so we're telling you about both of them now. The Hudson River Valley Ramble.
Yeah, which is much more important because that was really, that is really something that you guys started. And and Scott, tell them about it more.
Well, Beth has been working on that almost since the very first year, and it has grown to over 200 events and generates $21 million plus in economic impact each year. The dates this year are September 2nd and 3rd, 9th and 10th, 16th and 17th, 23rd and 24th, 30th, and October 1st. 5 weekends because the calendar fell just right and we decided to sneak into October just a little bit.
How many people did you have last year? Beth? Wow.
So
Well, I guess it's a success, Beth, right?
Sign up your events, please.
Well, stand up and tell them.
what's the deadline for signing up events?
It's Friday. 9.
So-
June 9th.
So if you sign up your event on our Ramble website, HudsonRiverValleyRamble.com, it will get into our printed brochure, which will be distributed to 38,000 people.
No, 63,000.
63,000 people and their families. So hundreds of thousands of people. And if you aren't able to get your event, or if you come up with an event after Friday, sign up anyway because it will be on the website and people will come.
Beth, do you have anything more you want to say about this? You've done a marvelous job on this. Talk about it.
Well, we really can't do it without all of the organizations that sponsor events. Boroughs, the John Burroughs Association does events every year. Jane Daniels has hosted a hike every year. This is the 18th year of the Ramble. So we have so many partners. Washington headquarters has an event every year. So many of our historic sites. We have so many cycling associations, the Newburgh Rowing Association. We have so many partners that put on these events. We can't do it. Full backs here. How could we possibly pull this off? So we've been so fortunate that people have latched onto it. And then what they're seeing is that once they associate with the Ramble, I get phone calls every year. We got so many more people to come to our event once we became part of the Ramble. So it's a nice symbiotic relationship that we have with our partner organizations.
Any questions or comments for Beth? She really does an incredible job.
Yes, she does.
We get a lot of help.
Yeah.
Yes, how far north does the Ramble go?
It can be in Saratoga and Washington County. The length of the
Would you like me to go to my executive director's report? Which I
Yes.
will keep.
Any other questions or comments?
The National Heritage Area.
We'll get to that in new business.
Okay. Scott, you're on.
So you all have received a copy of the executive director's report. I feel no need to read it to you because, it's a nice day. I wouldn't want you falling asleep. But I do want to ask all of our staff, including Andy, to stand up for a minute. That's you, Beth. Please thank them. They do a terrific job. With the addition of the Empire State Trail, my time is taken up a lot more with that now. And Shannon, Dan, Steve, and Beth have picked up the slack, and they're keeping everything moving forward, and without them, we'd be aground. So thank you, guys. Our next board meeting is October 11th, and now new business public comment. I recognize Colonel Johnson.
Yes, two of our projects are still bearing fruit. At Crowns Point in May, we cooperated with the installation of a new marker for the Henry Knox Cannon Trail. Most of the cannons that were picked up at Fort Ticonderoga to be taken to Boston came from Crowns Point. So now there's a new marker there to show the significance of Crowns Point and the Henry Knox Cannon Trail. Scott and I are working with the city of Albany to put a marker in what marker?
It's at the Corning Preserve.
Tell them a little bit more about the event. The cannon, bringing the cannons down. A lot of people don't know about it.
59 cannons and mortars transported from Fort Ticonderoga down Lake George, all the way to through Hudson Valley National Heritage Area into Massachusetts to Cambridge, and those were then used to help defense British assignment in Boston. They were going to leave anyway. We hastened that. Couldn't leave Lord Cannon fire to make them decide this time to go.
Wasn't it more cannon pointing since they didn't actually bring any ammunition with them?
I think that we, in this project, have claimed to one of the first heritage trails in the country, because the state legislatures in both Massachusetts and New York did this as a sesquicentennial project for the American Revolution in 1925. And you're hard pressed to find other nationally significant trails that are as key as this, because I think that this great track by Henry Knox and his teamsters really helped turn the tide and turn from America. I think we in the Hudson Valley National Heritage Area should be proud of what we are doing. We're working with the Champlain Corridor to hopefully get some more wayside exhibits up, and I think the one in Albany will really be important way station. The second is that we are going to have an event on the 17th of June in Peekskill to dedicate two wayside exhibits for the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route National Historic Trail. The acting superintendent, Paul Kenny, will be there. Our national chair of the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route USA, Janet Burnett, will be there. And we're going to dedicate those exhibits, and then we'll follow that up with some talks that Janet is putting together at the Peekskill Museum. Dr. Robert Seeley, who's the historian of the Washington Rochambeau effort, as well as Paul Kenny, to talk about water trails. And so the water route, but also tying into other trail initiatives. I know, Scott, you're going to be there to add your expertise with your work.
Yes.
So 17, June, Peekskill, gazebo area, 1 p.m. And George Washington is alleged to be showing.
Thank you, Colonel.
Stefan?
Yes, thank you. Just a sidebar. In 1970, Pete Seeger and the Clearwater crew sailed to Washington, D.C. on Earth Day and held a forum on the Clean Water Act at the Cannon Office Building. They delivered thousands of petitions of support to Congress. The event was considered a tipping point in the passage of this landmark legislation. Sidebar, Nixon was in charge and was far more amenable to the environment. Pete's message then is just as true today. We've sailed for a year now up and down the river, showing people what the river used to be, how it's polluted now and what it can be. But now we're going to Washington because the problems of the American rivers can't be solved by people like you and me. Only the federal government has the power to enact and enforce the laws that are needed. After this Clearwater revival, we will be sailing to Washington, D.C. We have secured a room in the visitor center. Cannon Office Building's under construction. We were hoping to be in the same room that Pete graced the nation. And we will be pleading for the Clean Water Act or the Environmental Protection Agency and the National Park Service. We have a solid lineup of speakers, from Mustafa Ali, the EPA director, who stepped down because he thought the environmental justice component of EPA would not be served with the current budget. There's many scientists. It's going to be an objective presentation of why the EPA is necessary for our nation. So I encourage all of you to come see us at the Clearwater Revival, June 17th and 18th in Croton. We're back, we're really strong. And then at the revival, you could sign petitions or send us emails about why you might think the EPA and the National Park Service are important to the country. We have children of Clearwater, if you will, from the Chesapeake Bay to the Puget Sound coming to Washington to support us. So I encourage all of you to be involved. There are some postcards for the festival, and I have some navigators if anyone would like to enjoy it. Thank you for your support. Thank you, and I also thank the Greenway because you came to the press conference in Albany where we kicked off this idea and lent your support.
That was Dan. Anyone else? Then I guess we get to go home early. Can I stop you?
Okay, and I think that brings our meeting to a close. I did want to make one pitch. If you're heading out of town, before you do, I invite you to just not take a different route out of Newburgh. Try to drive on a street you don't normally drive on, and give the city a look. I think it's important that when we come to places like this and we look out across the river, we don't just turn our backs to what's behind us. I think it's important to really remember our cities in this larger tapestry of beauty in Hudson River Valley. We also have some magnificent cities that need support and attention, and there's beautiful architecture here and a wonderful history, and it's more than just Washington's headquarters. There's a lot here to see, and there are people in the audience who are working hard to make Newburgh all that it can be. Cheryl, Vic, you have your Newburgh Restoration blog, which if any of you have seen it, it's a great resource. It's called Newburgh Restoration. And it's a site that's worth checking out frequently because it's constantly posting updates on what's going on in Newburgh and the positive news about the city, not just the negative news that you hear often in the headlines of our county paper. We also have Stuart Sachs here, who has done more than anyone I know to really keep the flame lit for the Dutch Reformed Church. Here, the A.J. Davis building just north of us here on Grand Street, worth checking out as you leave town. Tasha Smith, we had a great lunch in the city not too long ago, and you brought me up to date on your wonderful work on African-American history in Newburgh. People don't realize that there's a really deep, rich African-American history story here in Newburgh that goes well beyond the stories that we typically hear about that go all the way back to the beginning. And it's an important story that goes through the Revolution, the Civil War, up until our present day. In fact, the church right here used to be the Union Presbyterian Church in Newburgh, but in 1957, a church mission that had started in the home of a bricklayer in Newburgh, right here on the waterfront, became the Ebenezer Baptist Church. And on Palm Sunday, 1957, with urban renewal in the air, the community had a procession up the hill, up 2nd Street here, to consecrate this church as Ebenezer Baptist. So this is a really historic African-American church in Newburgh, and it's one of many. There's a really rich tradition here and an inclusive story that we need to tell. And so I think as we build this future together in the Valley, we don't forget our cities. Cities like Newburgh really need that. Friend, did you want to add on to that?
Well, building on your idea of staying in Newburgh, if anyone wants to join me for lunch and spend a little money in Newburgh, I'd be happy to an open lunch date for anyone who wants to find a nice place.
There you go. Hope there's a taker for that. That's great, friend. Thank you.
About the tower? I'm not the best person to say it. I'm not the best person to say it.
Well, yeah, we spoke about the tower earlier. The Tower Victory is moving forward, and it should be done, I think, within the next year or so. It's a $1.6 million project. And the Dutch Reformed Church, we have to keep our eye on that because the city of Newburgh is currently trying to sell it as part of a package of properties for development, but that really is a gem. When it was built in 1835, it was meant to be a symbol of American democracy for anyone coming up and down the river, that not only that Newburgh had arrived, but that America had arrived. It's a really magnificent building, and it's something that we really must always keep our mind's eye on, even though when we're not here. It's something that really deserves attention. So it's a great city. Yes, Kitty?
What is the name of the Newburgh Mall?
Newburgh Restoration. If you just Google that, you'll get it. And it's still being updated and it's still active. You'll get, I think, stories about Newburgh Illuminated that just took place in Newburgh last week. And also you get great stories about individuals who are making a contribution at the level of even restoring a home they bought or a new business that's opening. So it's a really great way to get the positive news of the city of Newburgh, because if you just are far and you follow the main headlines on the Mid-Hudson News or the Times Hall Record, you get a very narrow, I think, view of what's happening here. And there's just a great building momentum here for a renaissance.
Kevin, the Dutch Reformed Church needs more than our watchful eye. It needs powerful shoulders to the wheel, or it's not going to happen.
Yes.
And it would be the single most important example of major historic preservation and reuse in the valley, if we can pull it off.
Yep.
It's waited too long.
I couldn't agree more with it. And so with that, again, as you make your way out of the city, if you even are in a rush, just take a different route in than you came. That's all what I would ask you to do. All right. Thanks so much. It's been a great meeting. I hope everyone has a great summer. And we'll be back again in October. And again, thank you all for being here, and thank you to the staff. And Andy, we're delighted that you're now part of the Greenway. So have a great day, everyone. Drive safe.